The sea, where oil is born, sometimes becomes the scene of tragedies. Here are 4 accidents, each involving loss, fire, and lengthy recovery. Listen carefully, this is not just a chronicle, but also a reminder of the price of technology. Deepwater Horizon went down in history as one of the most severe man-made disasters on an oceanic scale, calling into question the safety of deepwater drilling and control standards in the oil industry. In 2010, an explosion occurred on a floating drilling rig operated under contract by BP in the Gulf of Mexico, and this event marked the beginning of a large-scale environmental and social crisis. A powerful fire broke out on the platform and an uncontrolled explosion occurred, killing 11 people and leaving families in grief and communities in shock. After the detonation, an unprecedented oil spill began. Crude oil began to flow from the damaged well under enormous pressure, rushing into the waters of the Gulf and quickly spreading across the surface and into the depths. Experts estimate that the total volume of the spill exceeded 750 million liters of oil, a figure that hides the destruction of ecosystems, the death of birds and marine life, and the suffering of coastal communities whose livelihoods depended on fishing and tourism. Operations to contain and eliminate the spill lasted for months. Rescue services, the military, private contractors, and environmentalists worked around the clock to control the fountain and collect oil from the surface and the coastline. Various methods were used: plugs, relief wells, floating barriers, and oil skimmers, but the depth and pressure complicated the work and made many solutions risky. The environmental damage is impossible to fully assess. The death of entire populations of fish, seabirds, mammals, and invertebrates, long-term changes in food chains and migration routes, all this has left a heavy mark on the region's nature. Coastal ecosystems, mangrove forests, river deltas, and beaches were covered with oil slicks, leading to the destruction of nests, the death of young animals, and a reduction in food sources for many species, as well as the deterioration of the health of people involved in the cleanup and living nearby. The economic consequences for regions dependent on fishing and tourism were catastrophic. Local communities' incomes fell sharply, many businesses suspended operations, and recovery required significant costs and time. Legal battles, lawsuits, and compensation payments became an integral part of the post-crisis reality. The companies involved in the operation and management of the platform were held accountable, followed by multi-billion-dollar settlements and lengthy court proceedings. Government and international investigations revealed a chain of errors, disregard for warnings, compromises in favor of speed and cost savings, and insufficient oversight by regulators, which led to demands for reforms and stricter safety regulations. Important outcomes included the revision and strengthening of deep-water drilling regulations, stricter technical control of platforms, tougher requirements for spill prevention systems, and mandatory staff training and certification programs. In addition to legal liability, companies faced serious reputational damage. Public trust in oil corporations weakened, and environmental organizations and activists gained increased attention to issues of corporate responsibility towards nature. Scientific research initiated after the accident yielded new data on the behavior of oil in deep water conditions and on the influence of hydrodynamics and biochemical processes on the distribution and decomposition of pollutants, which contributed to the development of improved monitoring and cleanup methods. This research has helped to create models that predict spill trajectories and their long-term consequences, and has stimulated the development of technologies that respond more effectively to such accidents. However, even the best technology and knowledge cannot fully restore the biological diversity and cultural values lost as a result of the disaster, and many of the consequences remain the subject of long-term observation and scientific analysis. The story of Deepwater Horizon is also a story of human lives. The families of those who died, the workers who survived the tragedy, the volunteers who cleaned up in difficult conditions, and the experts who devoted years to restoring nature and communities. The memory of the tragedy has been a catalyst for change. Public pressure, journalistic investigations, and civic initiatives have accelerated the adoption of new requirements and increased transparency in the industry, as well as intensifying the debate about the role of fossil fuels in the modern world and the need to transition to more sustainable energy sources. Despite the measures taken, the accident demonstrated that technological superiority does not guarantee absolute safety, and that human factors, corporate interests, and the complexity of the natural environment can create conditions for disaster. Therefore, the lesson of Deepwater Horizon remains relevant. There is a need for constant risk preparedness, independent oversight, investment in safety and ecosystem monitoring, as well as open dialogue between companies, the state and society about the price nature pays for energy production. The recovery required international assistance, compensation, and lengthy coastal rehabilitation campaigns, and the memory of this tragedy continues to motivate efforts to prevent similar disasters in the future. The Petrobras P-36 platform became a symbol of one of the worst tragedies in the history of offshore oil production in Brazil and reminded the world of the risks associated with the operation of giant floating structures. When, in 2001, a series of explosions occurred on the lower decks of this facility, then considered the largest in the world, where the pump and technical rooms were located, events unfolded rapidly and irreversibly. The explosions caused damage to the internal compartments, compromised the integrity of the structures, and led to a massive influx of water and fuel into the holds, which ultimately deprived the platform of stability and led to its sinking. As a result of the tragedy, 11 workers lost their lives, leaving behind families and a community that suffered both morally and economically. Rescue operations began immediately, but severe sea conditions and damage to the platform itself significantly complicated evacuation and search efforts. In the hours and days that followed, attention focused on preventing environmental consequences and assessing the extent of the pollution. A clear picture of the spills and damage gradually emerged. Oil products and other pollutants spread across the water surface, entered coastal ecosystems and affected marine fauna, biological communities, and fisheries on which coastal municipalities depended. The environmental damage was not only evident in the obvious pollution of the coastline and the death of individual species, but also in long-term changes in food chains, a decline in the fertility of some areas of the sea, and the deterioration of the health of the population involved in the cleanup, who had limited means of protection. For the Brazilian oil industry, the incident was a severe blow. In addition to human casualties and environmental disaster, the consequences included significant financial losses, downtime, and reputational damage for both the company itself and the industry as a whole. The legal and administrative proceedings that followed the accident revealed a whole chain of shortcomings, from design and construction vulnerabilities to problems in the organization of maintenance and safety compliance, and gave rise to numerous lawsuits, investigations, and demands for compensation for the victims' losses. Investigations showed that a combination of factors, including metal fatigue, possible errors in repair work, and gaps in monitoring systems, created conditions in which a single malfunction quickly escalated into a catastrophic chain reaction. The tragedy was followed by reforms. Design and operating standards for offshore platforms were tightened, equipment and personnel control and certification procedures were strengthened, stricter requirements for early accident detection systems and backup procedures were introduced, and investment in training and preparing crews for emergency situations was increased. At the same time, the accident stimulated scientific research into assessing the long-term environmental consequences and finding technologies capable of more effectively localizing and neutralizing spills, which led to the development of new methods for monitoring, modeling currents, and biological responses of ecosystems. The social consequences were felt for years. Local fisheries and tourism infrastructure experienced a decline, many coastal residents faced loss of income and the need for social support, and restoring trust in the industry required transparent actions, compensation, and the involvement of independent experts. The memory of those who died and the suffering of communities became an important moral argument in discussions about energy safety and corporate responsibility. Family stories, testimonies from survivors, and chronicles of the cleanup remind us that the cost of mistakes in this industry is measured not only in material losses. Today, the legacy of the Petrobras P-36 accident is seen as a lesson that forced a rethink of approaches to risk management at sea, the introduction of strict standards, and the expansion of international cooperation to prevent similar incidents, as well as a reminder that human life, the environment, and long-term sustainability must always be a priority when making technological and economic decisions, and that such disasters require not only technical fixes, but also a profound rethinking of values and practices across the industry as a whole in order to minimize the likelihood of similar tragedies recurring and to preserve natural and social resources for future generations. And in the public consciousness, this story remains a call for constant vigilance, responsibility, and transparency in the work of oil giants. This accident prompted a serious review of safety regulations and investment in modern monitoring and emergency response technologies. The tragedy involving the Trinity Spirit floating oil production facility off the coast of Nigeria in 2022 became one of the most dramatic environmental and human disasters in the region and has long been recorded in the annals of maritime accidents. As a result of a powerful explosion and subsequent fire, the vessel, which served as an FPSO, was almost completely destroyed, and the oil reserves stored on it, estimated at more than 50,000 barrels, were spilled into the sea, creating a large-scale spill that quickly spread across the surface and penetrated coastal waters and mangrove thickets. The fire completed the destruction of the structures, exacerbating the damage to the equipment and accelerating the demise of the floating storage facility, after which the vessel sank, leaving behind a heavy legacy of polluted shores, dead marine fauna, and destroyed sources of livelihood for local communities. Immediately after the incident, emergency services and volunteers rushed to deal with the aftermath, but the force of the fire, the depth of the damage, and the remoteness of some of the affected areas made the work dangerous and ineffective in the first critical days. Traditional methods of oil collection and floating slick separation proved partially ineffective in the face of the scale and intensity of the spill. The environmental consequences were rapid and varied. Birds were covered in oil and lost their ability to fly, fish and shellfish died or migrated, mangrove forests and coastal ecosystems were severely stressed, leading to disruption of food chains and a decline in biodiversity in the coastal zone. For coastal communities dependent on fishing and marine industries, the consequences were economic disaster. Fishing catches plummeted, fishing grounds were rendered unusable for months and years, and the incomes of already vulnerable families collapsed, requiring large-scale humanitarian and economic support. The loss of life caused by the explosion was a tragic reminder of the human cost of such accidents. Families lost their breadwinners, and public outrage led to demands for a transparent investigation, corporate accountability, and improved safety measures at sea. The international community and environmentalists demanded an immediate and thorough investigation into the causes of the explosion and an assessment of the damage, while law enforcement agencies and maritime regulators began reviewing documentation, maintenance procedures, and compliance with safety standards at the facility. The investigations raised questions about the technical condition of the equipment, the procedure for storing and processing oil on board, fire safety measures, and staff training for emergencies. The role of external factors, including possible disruptions in the supply chain and oversight, was also discussed. The economic costs of cleanup and compensation rose to significant amounts, and the companies responsible for operation and insurance were embroiled in lengthy litigation and negotiations with affected communities, government agencies, and environmental organizations. Spill cleanup operations required the use of specialized equipment, collection vessels, and chemical reagents, as well as bioremediation and coastal ecosystem restoration techniques, but full restoration of the natural environment proved to be a long and costly process, requiring coordination between authorities, companies, and international experts. The tragedy also served as a catalyst for a review of regulations in Nigeria's oil and gas industry and international maritime safety standards. Requirements for storage equipment, fire protection, emergency response procedures, and regular inspections were tightened, and stricter insurance and environmental damage liability rules were introduced. Activists and environmental organizations used the resonance of the incident to draw attention to the issues of quality control and corporate responsibility, demanding greater transparency in the activities of companies and stricter state supervision. Scientific research initiated after the accident led to a deeper understanding of oil spill behavior in regional hydrological conditions and the development of improved pollution dispersion models, which helped to optimize future spill monitoring and cleanup operations. Social programs to support affected communities included compensation payments, restoration of fishing grounds, and training in alternative livelihoods, but restoring trust and stability took time and sustained effort. In the public consciousness, this incident remained not only as an example of technological failure and environmental damage, but also as a reminder of the need to balance the needs of energy production and nature conservation, and that economic interests always come at the expense of human lives and the fate of entire communities. The loss of the crew and the scale of the pollution prompted an international response. Investigations, legal proceedings, and demands for efforts to restore ecosystems and support the affected communities and their hopes. In 2005, an explosion on the Mumbai High North platform off the coast of India became one of the most tragic episodes in the history of the Indian oil industry and left a deep mark on the lives of workers, coastal communities, and government safety policy. The incident occurred after a gas tanker collided with the platform structure, puncturing tanks and causing an intense gas leak that instantly turned into an uncontrollable fire. The flames engulfed the upper and lower decks, damaging vital engineering systems and leaving the crew virtually cut off from evacuation routes. The explosion and subsequent spread of fire claimed the lives of 22 workers and seriously injured dozens of people. many of whom suffered severe burns and injuries that required prolonged hospitalization and rehabilitation. The tragedy revealed not only the physical vulnerability of platform structures, but also the social cost of accidents, with families losing breadwinners and small coastal communities losing sources of income and support. The immediate response of the emergency services included the deployment of helicopters, boats, and emergency response teams. But due to the intensity of the fire and the danger of repeated explosions, many evacuation and firefighting attempts were complicated, and rescue operations required coordination between platform operators, maritime authorities, and independent experts. The environmental impact, although less extensive than that of major spills, was still significant. The release of petroleum products and combustion products into the marine environment led to the death of marine fauna, contamination of coastlines, and deterioration of water quality in adjacent areas, which had a negative impact on fisheries and related industries. The economic damage was estimated to be significant. Production downtime, repair work, and compensation to victims created long-term financial obligations for operators and the industry as a whole, while investigations raised questions about compliance with international safety standards at offshore facilities. Detailed technical investigations followed, which identified a number of factors that led to the disaster. A combination of design flaws, errors in managing vessel traffic in the platform area, inadequate risk assessment when maneuvering large vessels near drilling rigs, and gaps in monitoring and emergency alert systems. These findings prompted a review of procedures for interaction between vessels and fixed platforms, tighter maritime traffic rules in production areas, and stricter requirements for equipment maintenance and personnel training. The legal consequences included lawsuits from relatives of the deceased and injured, administrative investigations and fines, and in a number of cases, reforms were initiated in the industry's regulatory framework to increase accountability and transparency in the work of companies. From a public perspective, the tragedy served as a catalyst for increased public scrutiny and for independent organizations to participate in risk assessment and monitoring of safety measures. Journalistic investigations and reports ensured that the incident remained in the spotlight for weeks and months, and that demands for compensation and improvements remained in the spotlight. For many oil industry workers, the incident served as a reminder of the need for ongoing emergency preparedness, regular drills, and independent verification of accident prevention systems. Experience has shown that a combination of technical measures and human factors determines the level of safety in complex offshore projects. Long-term consequences included investments in the modernization of protection and emergency warning systems, crew training programs, and stricter standards for maritime transport operating near platforms. However, restoring confidence in the industry took time. The families of the deceased and those affected continued to demand fair compensation, while public initiatives and trade unions insisted on transparent and accessible mechanisms for monitoring safety compliance. On a human level, the events of Mumbai High North left a lasting echo. Stories of the heroism of rescuers, the harsh conditions of working at sea, the losses and the subsequent recovery became part of the collective memory and influenced the safety culture in the regional oil industry. The lessons of this disaster lie not only in technical changes, but also in the understanding that risks at sea require a comprehensive approach that takes into account navigation, the technical condition of equipment, staff training, and interaction with local communities in order to minimize the chance of a repeat tragedy and protect human lives and natural resources for future generations. In addition to technical and legal measures, social and medical support programs became an important part of the aftermath. Psychological support services, retraining programs, and payments to the families of the victims, as well as the restoration of coastal infrastructure. The incident stimulated international exchange of experience and joint training in firefighting and evacuation, as well as the introduction of remote monitoring systems and automated response measures. Technological improvements included leak detectors, auto-closing valves, and remote control systems. The memory of those who died is preserved in memorials and training programs so that new generations of workers remember the price of safety. Their implementation requires oversight, transparency, and the ongoing involvement of local communities and independent experts. While the waves wash away the traces of disasters, the memory of the victims and environmental losses remains our shared responsibility. Each of these tragedies is a reminder that technology without strict rules and human vigilance is doomed to failure. Investment in safety, transparency of corporate actions, and independent oversight are not a formality, but a vital necessity. We must demand openness from corporations in investigations, swift and fair compensation for damage, and the participation of local communities in decision-making. Scientific research, international exchange of experience, and staff training can reduce risks, but only a combination of measures and political will can produce real results. It is important to remember the human side. Families have lost loved ones, workers have risked their lives, and ecosystems will take years to recover. Every video, every publication, and every demand for reform brings us closer to ensuring that such stories are never repeated. If you are watching this, share the information, support independent investigations, and demand accountability. It is a small but important step towards safety and nature conservation. Let the memory of those who died be an incentive for change, not just another line in the accident reports.